I am Claire Johnson, 32, CFO at a rising tech startup in Manhattan. On a humid Monday morning, I found a sealed envelope resting on my mahogany desk. My name was scrawled across the front in my father's handwriting, Michael Johnson. Inside, I discovered the final draft of the IPO prospectus I had spent months perfecting, accompanied by a single cold note. Don't forget who really built this. My heart lurched. Every late night, every strategic decision, every ounce of sweat I poured into this company suddenly felt as though it had been crafted by someone else. I pressed my palms to my temples, staggering as if struck. The panoramic windows behind me blurred, New York skyline folding into shadows. In that moment, I realized the betrayal ran deeper than mere paperwork. The person who should have championed me had undermined my every success. But before I could even process what I'd just lost, memories of warm Christmas mornings flooded back, and that would mark the true beginning of my quest for answers and closure. Quickly, I remember that first Christmas like it was yesterday. I was 24, fresh out of business school and wide-eyed when my parents handed me my first big girl gift, a custom leather portfolio etched with my initials. The chilly December air bit at my cheeks as we stepped out of the elevator in our Upper West Side building. Mom, in her favorite unrolled wool coat, carried a steaming tin of pecan pie she'd baked that morning. Dad hoisted Emily onto his shoulders so she could wave at every passerby below. When we reached Rockefeller Center, the sight of the enormous tree glowing with thousands of lights felt like magic. Emily, only 8 at the time, spun in circles, her red coat flashing against the white sidewalk, and I tucked my arm through hers, promising I'd teach her how to spin on ice without landing flat on her back. That Christmas set the tone for the next few years. Friday pancake breakfasts at our kitchen island, where syrup dripped in perfect rivers. Saturday afternoons volunteering at Laura's charity toy drive, watching Mom wrap dolls and Dad organize donated books. Sunday evenings cuddled on our couch for family movie night, bundled under a single plaid blanket. Even after I moved into a Soho loft at 26, I'd drag Laura and Emily along to celebrate every milestone. My first board presentation, my promotion to senior financial analyst, and the night I closed my first 7-figure deal. I still remember the pride shining in Dad's eyes when he sent me a text afterward saying, "That's my girl." Dad's mentorship was as hands-on as it was heartfelt. He insisted I join him in the conference room at Johnson & Johnson Financial whenever he had a high-stakes client meeting. I'd watch his calm confidence as he negotiated interest rates, sliding poorly formatted spreadsheets across the glossy table. Later, he'd pull me aside in his oak-paneled office and quiz me on risk ratios and cash flow projections, turning complex concepts into puzzles I couldn't wait to solve. When I finally cracked my first flawed model, discovering a misplaced decimal point that had thrown projections off by millions, Dad threw back his head and laughed in delight, ruffling my hair like I was still 6 years old. Mom's lessons were quieter, but no less powerful. Laura taught me the value of empathy and leadership. During her weekly visits to the women's shelter in Brooklyn, I'd help her sort through donated coats or serve coffee, learning how to listen when someone needed more than just a warm meal. Afterward, we'd grab bagels at the corner cafe, and she'd ask about my work, but instead of grilling me on metrics, she would ask, "How did you make people you worked with feel today?" I realized then that numbers meant nothing without the humans behind them. Emily was my shadow, my champion, and sometimes my most honest critic. At 15, she fell head over heels for a boy at her high school, and when he broke her heart, she texted me at 2 a.m. He said I'm too intense. WW does that even mean? I dropped everything and flew home, insisting we binge-watch rom-coms until her tears dried. The next morning, she showed up at my office in skinny jeans and a coffee in hand, blinking back sleep and embarrassment. "Thanks for being my knight in shining pajamas," she joked. I nearly cried all over my spreadsheet. In those years, our home felt like a tapestry of rituals woven tight with love. Friday night library runs with Dad. He'd read aloud from his investment strategy books in the car, just to keep my mind sharp. Saturday morning farmers markets with Mom. She'd barge into vendor stalls, asking about asparagus Provence, never letting me pay full price for anything. Even my friendship with Samuel Brooks had roots in these traditions. He'd been Emily's lab partner in chemistry class, and showed up at our door on his bike, brimming with jokes and leftover cupcakes. When I introduced him as a friend from Chicago, Mom pulled him into a hug so tight I thought his ribs might crack. But his grin matched hers. By 28, I was Dad's trusted lieutenant. He invited me on a trip to Boston to pitch a mergers and acquisitions deal, where I delivered the closing argument that won us the contract. I'll never forget the look on Laura's face in the hallway outside the boardroom when I joined her. Pride and relief mingled in her eyes as she slipped her arm around mine, whispering, "You were incredible." In celebration, Dad whisked us to a rooftop bar overlooking the Charles River, where the skyline glittered like our family's dreams. Emily's own passions deepened during those years. She took up jazz dance, practicing her routine on our balcony to Ella Fitzgerald's voice, crackling through old vinyl. I'd lean against the railing below, cheering her on as she kicked higher and spun faster than I thought possible. One Saturday afternoon, we hopped the A train downtown to catch a live show at a tiny club. The brass band trumpets and saxophones echoed in her eyes, and I pretended I understood music theory so she'd think I shared her fascination. When she reached out and squeezed my hand during a solo so bloody good it brought tears to our eyes, I knew that no financial victory could ever match the power of that moment. Together, we weathered setbacks too. I remember consoling Emily when she failed her driver's ed test, her face crumpled in defeat, her favorite red lipstick smeared. We spent that Sunday afternoon practicing parallel parking in an empty lot, laughing so hard we almost forgot why we started. After she nailed it on her second try, she threw her arms around me and said, "You make everything possible," and I felt a swell of protective love I still carry. Even amid that whirlwind of achievements and rituals, there were tiny fissures I overlooked. I noticed Dad's phone buzzing late on Sundays for messier messages he brushed off as work emergencies. I caught Mom staring out the window at family dinner, her smile a little too forced. And sometimes, in the glow of our kitchen lights, I'd see Emily's phone light up with a message she'd hide when I looked her way. But I chalked it up to the stress of my coming IPO, board meetings, investor dinners, and the relentless chase to prove myself in a man's world. Nothing ever seemed off until now. Yet amid those glowing holiday memories, one strange text from Emily made me realize nothing was as perfect as it seemed. I first noticed something was off on a Tuesday afternoon. I had settled into my corner office with a panoramic view of the Hudson River, ready to pore over the latest revenue projections for our Q2 earnings call. My phone buzzed insistently, an unknown number. Over a dozen texts all arrive in rapid succession. "Stop what you're doing. We need to talk." Curious and wary, I unlocked the phone and opened the thread. Every message read the same. "Don't trust the data." My brow furrowed. I swiped into my work email and scanned the inbox. Everything looked normal until I noticed 3 messages timestamped at 3:14 IDM, far before I'd even staggered into bed. The sender was me. Blank subjects, empty bodies. I clicked one open and found a single hyphen in the subject line. but the body was completely devoid of content. My pulse quickened. Had my account been hijacked? I dialed Samuel in Chicago on speaker as I launched our IT dashboard. He answered on the second ring, bleary-eyed but alert. "Claire." "Sam, my inbox. It's compromised. I'm seeing emails I didn't send, and they're blank." Silence crackled over the line. Then, in his calm Midwestern drawl, "Change your passwords. Now. And have your team pull the server logs. Already on it." I muted the call and barked orders to Cyrus's Marcus to loop in our secret. By the time I unmuted, Samuel's voice returned. "Find the IP address. Trace it." "I see an unusual login London. Private VPN," I reported, flipping through log entries. "Someone's covering their tracks. They've got resources. Stay sharp." That evening I joined my family for a modest elevation of my IPO anniversary just dinner at our favorite Italian place on the Upper East Side. Laura passed me a fork full of truffle mac and Michael raised his glass. "To Claire, our trailblazer." Emily clinked her wine glass against mine, eyes bright. Then Emily's phone buzzed. She checked it, her expression draining to ashenal. "It's them," she whispered, slipping from the table. My fork clattered against the plate. I excused myself and found her in the stairwell, leaning against the banister. The halo of the exit sign glowed above us. "What's wrong?" I asked gently. She slid her phone toward me. On the screen. The same number, this time blackmail. "We have your sister's laptop. Transfer $500,000, 0 cents, to the account we'll send, or she won't walk out alive." I stared at her, heart pounding. My sister, my bright, fearless little sister, threatened by ghosts in the machine. Rage and fear warred inside me. I dialed Marisarl again. "Trace that account. Fast." Then I called a private investigator Samuel had recommended. The gruff voice on the other end said, "Money buys me time. Clues don't come cheap." I swallowed. "Do what you need." Back in my apartment that night, I paced between my glass coffee table and my floor-to-ceiling windows. The New York skyline shimmered, but those lights felt distant, like someone else's life. I mentally retraced the day's events. Hacked emails, ominous texts, Emily's terrified face. Someone knew our routines, our passwords, our family. Someone who could strike at work and at home. Sleep eluded me. I sat at my desk, reviewing every user log, every meeting invite, every room grumbling record. Why conference room 23? Why 10 a.m. tomorrow? I set multiple alarms, loaded my laptop bag with power banks and voice recorder, and practiced a calm face in the mirror, because I knew I'd have to walk into a trap without showing fear. At dawn, I grabbed a coffee from the corner deli and drowned out my nerves with black Americano. The barista offered a sympathetic smile. Somehow she knew I was running on fumes. I thanked her, scribbled a note to pay it forward, and braced myself for the workday ahead. On the train into Midtown, I texted Samuel. "They've threatened Emily. Need escalation." He replied within minutes. "I'm on a flight. Stay safe." His words usually ground me, but today they only reminded me how alone I'd feel when I faced that empty conference room. I watched fellow commuters' briefcases thumping, earbuds in place, oblivious to the storm brewing in my world. Stepping off the elevator at the 23rd floor, my heart hammered. I passed Michael's reserved office, his nameplate gleaming, then stopped outside room 23. The hallway lights buzzed low, and beyond the frosted glass, I could make out the outline of a single chair and table. My breath caught. I checked my phone. No new texts. But I knew it was too quiet. I squared my shoulders, tapped open the door and stepped inside, closing it softly behind me. The chair lay empty, the table bare, but my reflection stared back at me from the glass wall. I set my bag down, reached for my recorder, and then my phone buzzed again. One message right behind you. My pulse seized in my chest. I spun around, and that's when I heard soft footsteps echoing in the corridor. My rational mind told me to flee, to scream, to press the emergency button by the door. But another voice, cold, determined, whispered, "This ends now." I flipped the recorder on, took one last measured breath, and prepared to confront the person who had crossed every boundary. But then one phone call changed everything. I stepped into the boardroom of Glass Tower, 45 stories above Manhattan, and felt every eye in the room gravitate toward me. The polished mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lights, while our lead investors murmured among themselves. My father, Michael Johnson, stood at the head of the table, his signature navy suit impeccable, his posture unshakable. Beside him, my mother, Laura, held a flute of champagne, and my sister Emily hovered at the back, face pale, clutching her clutch like a lifeline. This was the anniversary celebration of our IPO, my greatest professional triumph, and now the stage for my greatest personal confrontation. I set my leather portfolio down and placed my phone on the table, camera facing up. "Before we begin," I said, voice steady, "I have something to disclose." Silence fell. Jared Simmons of Meadowbrook Capital leaned forward, eyebrow raised. "Go ahead, Claire." I tapped record on my phone. The red light blinked. "Earlier today, I uncovered evidence that the public filings bearing my signature and those of the two people I trusted most have been tampered with." I slid the official prospectus across the table and placed beside it a stack of internal sheets. These show 24 unauthorized transfers totaling $5,200,000, 0 cents, routed through shell entities. I met my father's eyes. "And these transfers point directly to you." Gasps rippled. Laura's hand flew to her chest. Emily's breath hitched. Michael's calm facade cracked. "Claire, what are you saying?" he asked, voice clipped. I handed Jared the documents. "Compare them with the audit report you received. You'll see the discrepancies." Jared's brow furrowed as he inspected the papers. This isn't in our records." "I thought it was my oversight," I continued, "until I reviewed our bank reconciliations and internal emails. The trail is unmistakable." I turned my phone screen toward them, timestamps, transaction codes, and account numbers matching those on the questionable ledger. My mother stumbled back. "Claire, this must be a mistake." I double-checked, I said. "And there's more." I pressed play on the recorder. The speakers crackled, then filled with my own voice recounting the hidden camera footage I'd obtained last night. Michael entering a shadowy parking garage at dawn, exchanging a briefcase with a stranger. Laura reviewing numbers on a tablet. The room grew colder with every frame. When the playback ended, I looked at my sister. Emily filmed this on her phone and sent it to me, though she was terrified to come forward. Emily stepped into the light, her shoulders squared. She opened her bag, produced her phone, and showed them the original, unedited video. Investors leaned in, jaws slack. Michael's face had drained of color. You set me up," he accused, voice trembling. "I set no one up," I replied. "I sought the truth." I tapped my portfolio. "I've submitted all evidence to our legal counsel and to the SEC. Today, I'm making an official statement. I resign as CFO, effective immediately." The words fell like a gavel. A low murmur surged. Laura sank into her chair. Michael opened his mouth, then closed it, swallowing hard. Jared Simmons cleared his throat. "We appreciate your integrity, Claire," he said. "This board will convene to decide next steps." I met my mother's tear-streaked eyes. "Why?" I asked softly. "Why betray me like this?" She shook her head, tears slipping free. "We were scared," she confessed. "Your father had debts, dangerous debts. We thought we could cover them discreetly, protect the family." I pressed on. "At what cost? You risked my career, our company's reputation, and our family's legacy." My throat tightened, but I forced the next words out. "I'm choosing honesty over fear." Emily touched my arm. "We'll rebuild," she whispered. "Together, but the right way." I nodded, squeezing her hand. In that moment, the weight of their betrayal shattered, but I felt something new take its place. A fierce clarity. We would rebuild on a foundation of truth, no matter how painful the process. As I gathered my portfolio, the boardroom door opened, and Samuel Brooks, my oldest friend, and soon-to-be former COO, stepped in, eyes grave but proud. He gave me a subtle nod, ready to stand by me. Outside, the city's lights glittered like broken promises. I straightened my shoulders. The path ahead would be treacherous lawsuits, media storms, personal fallout, but I had reclaimed my agency. Because in exposing the ultimate betrayal, I had found an unexpected freedom. The freedom to define my own success. And as I led my family and colleagues out of that room, I heard the click of cameras, the shuffle of investors, the faint hum of possibility. It was over. And it had just begun. Even after I'd unmasked the web of lies, the adrenaline faded and the weight of what I'd done crashed down on me in the darkest hours. I thought I'd hit rock bottom. I left the boardroom on unsteadied legs, my portfolio tucked against my side like a shield. The city's neon heartbeat throbbed through the glass walls, but in that moment, New York felt hollow. Its pulse mocking the emptiness gnawing at my inside. Samuel fell into step beside me, his hand firm against my back. "Want me to call a car?" he asked quietly. I shook my head. "I need space." I slipped past the revolving doors and into the night air, cold and sharp against my tear-blurred cheeks. The sidewalk was slick from an earlier drizzle. Street lamps glowed like ghosts as I fumbled for my phone. My fingers trembled, calls from journalists, texts from colleagues, even Emily reaching out to say she was safe. But I couldn't face anyone. I hailed a cab with a crooked hand and muttered the address of my apartment in Soho. Inside the back seat, I curled into myself, listening to the hum of the engine and the distant wail of sirens. My reflection in the window was a stranger. Mascara streaked down my face. My suit rumpled, hair loose from its ponytail. Every breath felt heavy, as though I were inhaling lead. I replayed the confrontation over and over, my father's hollow eyes, my mother's tremor, Emily's brave defiance, and wondered if I'd destroyed the family I once adored. When the cab dropped me off, the doorman gave a sympathetic nod. I paid without looking and stumbled up the stairs 2 at a time, bursting into my apartment and closing the door so hard the walls shivered. I sank to the floor, back against the door, and slid down until my legs folded beneath me. The leather portfolio thudded to the carpet, papers splaying like wounded butterflies. I buried my face in its flap and let the sobs come raw and ragged until there were no tears left, only the hollow ache of grief and dread. Hours passed. Moonlight seeping through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast long shadows across the hardwood floor. I pulled myself to my knees and crawled to the coffee table where my phone lay untouched. Texts from Emily. "I love you, sis." From Samuel. "Here if you need me." From my board liaison. "Please let us know your decision." I tapped the screen, but the messages swam before my eyes. My chest tightened. Breathing felt impossible. I pressed home and stared at the icons. Calendar, email, password vault. everything reminding me of the life I'd built and the life I'd just dismantled. I thought of the $5,200,000, 0 cents, the shell companies, the secrets hidden behind family photographs. How had I never seen the cracks? How blinded had I been by love, by loyalty? I crawled to my bedroom, kicking off my heels. I peeled away my suit jacket, untucked my blouse, and peeled those layers away too, until I stood in my underwear before the full-length mirror. The woman staring back at me looked haunted. Hollowed eyes, slumped shoulders, the curve of my jaw tight with tension. I reached out and brushed a palm across the glass, tracing the outline of my own face as though it belonged to someone else. On my nightstand sat the leather-bound planner my mother gave me on that first promotion, etched with my initials and hopeful words, "For all the days you conquer." I picked it up, fingers grazing the embossed cover. Inside were appointments, meeting notes, even the ticket stub from my first Chicago trip with Samuel. Each page was a testament to my drive, my ambition, my unwavering belief in the promise my family had nurtured. Yet here I was, the conqueror undone by the very people who once cheered me on. I flipped through the pages until I found a scribbled note from Emily. "Promise you'll always be my superhero." Those words stabbed at my heart. I sank onto the bed, clutching the planner to my chest, and let myself crumble. I thought of the night I taught her to spin on ice, her laughter echoing against the rink walls. I thought of Mom's gentle questions about how my day made others feel. I thought of Dad's pride as we watched me present financial models that glittered with possibility. All of it felt like a cruel mirage now. Sleep came in fits. I dreamt of conference rooms filled with empty chairs, of ghostly hands rifling through my files, of Emily's terrified eyes. I woke gasping, my heart thrumming like a trapped bird. Morning sunlight was merciless, slanting across the floor and lighting the dust motes that drifted like unanswered questions. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the distant rumble of city traffic, and wondered if I could ever face another orange sunrise without flinching. Late that morning, I dragged myself to the kitchen. I made coffee mechanically, a double shot of espresso in my favorite mug, and collapsed at the counter. Steam curled upward, warm against my chilled skin. I stared at the mug as though it might hold the answers, but when I raised it, my hand shook so violently I spilled a dark stream onto the marble. The scalding drip stung my wrist, but I barely noticed. My phone buzzed again. "Emily. I've booked a train back to Soho. I can't stay with Dad and Mom, knowing I'll be in danger." I tapped back. "Stay on the 3:15. I finished what was left of my coffee, wiped the spill with a dish towel, and stood. The kitchen's cool, minimalist lines felt like a hospital room. I needed to shake off the paralysis. I opened my laptop and drafted a secure message to my legal team. "I need an update on the protective order for Emily, and I want the PI's preliminary report, ASAP." I hit send without hesitation. Then I did something I hadn't in hours. I stood in front of the window. Below, the city pulsed with life taxes weaving like yellow ribbons, people jostling on the sidewalk, skyscrapers gleaming. The world I'd felt torn from was still here, indifferent to my agony. I clenched my fists and pressed them to my temples. The adrenaline that had fueled my confrontation in the boardroom was gone, but another current was stirring, something quiet yet insistent, a whisper in my mind reminding me why I fought. Not for revenge, but for justice. Not out of hatred, but out of love. Not to destroy, but to rebuild. I sent a final text. "I'm coming for you." Not to my family, but to the threat lurking in the shadows. I turned from the window and headed toward my study, where the evidence folder lay waiting, like a loaded weapon. I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and prepared to light the spark that would ignite my recovery. When hope seemed impossible, and every path ahead looked blocked by fear, a single unexpected call would rekindle the fire within me and change everything I thought I knew. I awoke before sunrise to a sky the color of bruised peach. The wind off Coney Island was brisk, tousling my hair as I climbed the wooden planks of the boardwalk. Stalls were still shuttered, the carousel's painted horses frozen in mid-gallop. My aching body, still stiff from the night before, stirred at the sound of faint scraping, someone unlocking a concession stand down the way. I wrapped my wool coat tighter and slid onto a weathered bench, pulling my knees to my chest. The Atlantic stretched before me like spilled ink, waves gently lapping at the shore. In that quiet moment, I felt the weight of everything I'd lost and everything I still had to fight for. My phone vibrated. I glanced down. Samuel Brooks' video call. My heart snagged. He'd flown in under the radar, promising critical evidence but keeping me waiting. I swiped to answer. "Claire," he said, voice urgent over the surf's hush. "I've got something you need to see." Behind him, the Chicago skyline, tall and resolute, loomed through his apartment window. I sat up. "What is it?" He swiveled his laptop toward me. On the screen, an email thread flagged with red urgent stamps. "I traced the London login," he explained. "It routes to a shell server registered to Stratton & Co., that private equity firm your father insisted was a harmless connection." He clicked, revealing a PDF attachment. Internal membanks, dated 6 months earlier, outlining a covert agreement between Michael Johnson and Stratton's managing partner, Victor Hargrove. I leaned closer. The memos detailed a backdoor transfer of $5,200,000, 0 cents, disguised as consulting fees, funneled through an offshore account under Emily's name. They set her up as a proxy. I breathed. Samuel nodded grimly. "Emily's laptop was stolen, but your sister's phone recorded the draft emails before it disappeared. I recovered the metadata timestamps, IP addresses, the works. It all points back to your parents' office." He paused. "And there's more." He opened another file, a short video clip, grainy, shot from a distance. It showed Michael exiting his brownstone early one morning, meeting a suited man under a flickering street lamp. The stranger handed over a manila envelope. Michael slipped it into his briefcase and walked away. "That man," Samuel said, "is Hargrove. They've been meeting weekly." My chest tightened. "So they planned this, my betrayal, from the start." Samuel's jaw clenched. "They thought you'd never find out." "Thank you," I said hoarsely, fear and adrenaline mingling in my veins. "I owe you everything. Just promise me one thing," he replied. "Shouldn't act alone. I've notified my contacts, lawyers, journalists, former Stratton employees. We have allies. But you need backup." I exhaled, the Atlantic air flooding my lungs. The storm inside me shifted. Range receded, replaced by fierce clarity. I stood. "Okay, let's finish this." We hung up. The sky had brightened to rose gold. The boardwalk lights winked off. I gazed at the roller coaster's skeletal frame, imagining the rush of the plunge, the thrill of control. This was my turning point, the moment I reclaimed my agency, armed not just with anger, but with proof. I texted Marisol, my assistant, "Hold off on public statements until further notice. And secure Emily's bank accounts, set fraud alerts." Then I drafted a secure message to our outside counsel, enclosed our new forensic files from Samuel Brooks. "Please prepare immediate SEC disclosures and advise on protective measures for Emily." I attached the memos and video metadata. As I hit send, my confidence surged. The long night of collapse was yielding to a dawn of. Next, I had to reach Emily. I dialed her on FaceTime, imagining her at her dorm in Vermont, nervous, frightened. Her face appeared, pale but determined. "Sis?" she sniffed. "I saw the same files. I'm sorry I withheld them. I was scared." I shook my head. "No, you did the right thing. You protected the evidence. Now, we'll protect you." I explained our legal shield, a temporary restraining order drafted that morning, asset freeze on the Stratton account, coordination with Chicago reporters ready to publish. "We're in this together," I said. "And we will win." She blinked, tears welling. "I believe you." Later that afternoon, I returned to Manhattan, adrenaline propelling me straight to Johnson & Johnson Financial. I passed through security with Sam's latest USB drive concealed in my coat pocket. A folder labeled Stratton Hargrove emails. Every step felt charged. The echo of my heels in the marble lobby, the soft click of the elevator as it climbed. My reflection in the polished glass door of my call's office, no longer a ghost of grief, but a warrior donned in calm resolve. Inside, I found Laura alone, sorting through holiday cards on her antique desk. She looked up, startled. "Claire," and I held up the drive. "It's over, Mom. I have everything." Her face crumbled. I took a breath. "We can handle this the right way. Transparency, accountability. Or I go public at 5 p.m. Laura's shoulders sagged. "I want to fix this." "You will," I answered. "But not by hiding in shadows." My voice softened, but the steel was remaining. "Let's start by telling Samuel to set up the press conference." She nodded, tears sliding free. That evening, back in my Soho loft, I opened a bottle of red wine and poured 2 glasses, one for me, one unspoken for my broken past. I gazed out at the city lights, each window a story of triumph or despair. Mine was far from over. But tonight, I toasted to new beginnings, to alliances forged in crisis, and to the spark of courage that blazed in the darkest hour. The recovery spark had ignited soon. I would turn flame into fury and forge a path to justice. Armed with irrefutable proof and newfound allies, I would step into the true heart of the enemy's lair and orchestrate their undoing from within. So here's what happened next. I rolled into the office early pre-dawn Manhattan, the streets whisper quiet athleticism. And honestly, it felt more like a dossier of deceit. The first document I clicked on was a simple memo dated December 28th, marked Family Advisory Retainer for $1,200,000, 0 cents. I blinked at it, thinking that was almost the entire budget we'd set aside for our family's Vermont cabin weekend last year. Not exactly a casual thanks for your advice fee. A couple of clicks later, there was another note. March 14th. Expansion grant quietly moving $800,000, 0 cents. The same ballpark as our nonprofit toy drive fundraising goal. And then, mid-June, a market initiative fee for $3,200,000, 0 cents, which just happened to mirror Emily's private school tuition for the whole year. By the time I totaled it up, $5.2 million quietly funneled through shell entities under my family's name. I felt that familiar churn of anger and clarity. Someone had been using our names like cover IDs to siphon off investors' money. But instead of dumping bullet points in a dry report, I knew I had to tell their story, my story, so that the board would feel it, not just read it. So I sketched out a narrative arc, conversational, almost like I was leading them through a podcast episode. For your foundations of trust. I reminded everyone of our holiday rituals, Mom's gingerbread house contests, Dad's Sunday spreadsheets over pancakes, Emily practicing jazz spins on the balcony with me cheering her on. I painted a picture of what family meant before the cracks appeared, inciting incident. The red flag I talked about, that January email titled "For Your Eyes Only," containing a wire transfer timestamps the very day Dad toasted my IPO strategy. I described my disbelief. I'd read that email 3 times before it registered as wrong. Rising action. The pattern emerging. I walked them through Spring's meetings with Victor Hargrove, emails from Stratton's managing partner popping up on Michael's work inbox, Laura's approval comments right underneath. I didn't just state the figures. I noted that each member's date coincided with key family milestones: my birthday, Emily's recital, our anniversary dinner. Climax. The hidden camera. Then I cued the recording. The boardroom fell silent while they watched Dad in a dimly lit garage on Park Avenue, handing a manila envelope to Hargrove. Then Mom scrolling through numbers on her tablet. Then Emily slipping away, clutching her phone that was streaming every second straight to Sam's secure server. Falling action. The unraveling. I let that silence hang. Then I calmly outlined next steps: an immediate external audit, SEC disclosures within 24 hours, and asset freezes on those shell companies. No finger-pointing rhetoric, just clear, decisive actions. Epilogue. A new beginning built on truth. Finally, I shared my vision for moving forward. A company and a family that could rise from this by choosing transparency over concealment, by owning every mistake. When I clicked to the final slide, a simple line in crisp white on a midnight blue background. Reclaiming our legacy begins with honoring our values. The room stayed quiet long enough for me to worry it had landed flat, and then Jared Simmons, who'd backed me since my days as an analyst, leaned forward and said, "Claire, you haven't just exposed fraud, you've reminded all of us what real leadership looks like." One by one, the director signed off on the legal motions: independent investigation, press release at 9 a.m., town hall meeting for employees. They even agreed to appoint Emily as honorary chief witness, an emotional but powerful gesture that made my throat tighten. My little sister, so brave, suddenly center stage. After the last signature, I packed my bag. Sam slipped in quietly, gave me a nod that said, "We did it." Outside the glass doors, Manhattan hung on taxicabs, billboards, people chasing their own stories, oblivious to the reckoning that just unfolded inside. I paused at Michael's empty office, his nameplate shining under the hallway lights. I closed my eyes for a second, remembering the man who taught me to love balance sheets like a puzzle. Then I squared my shoulders. Loyalty doesn't excuse betrayal. Protecting the ones you love sometimes means holding them to account. By the time I hit street level, the evening sky was streaked with purple and gold. I slipped my coat tighter around me and took a deep breath of that crisp city air, relentless, unsparing, alive. The tables had turned. They'd gambled with our names and I'd laid their cards bare. But this felt more like a beginning than an end. I'd exposed the scheme, but now came the real work: rebuilding trust, forging new traditions on honesty, giving every number and every memory a chance to stand in the light. Because in turning the tables on my own family's betrayal, I discovered something even stronger than revenge: the power to rewrite my story, one honest word at a time. Next, you'll see the fight through Samuel Brooks's eyes, how his Chicago network, late-night calls, and unwavering loyalty laid the groundwork for our boutique Silicon Valley advisory's unexpected rise. If you've ever wondered how this all came together, let me tell you about Samuel Brooks. We met in a cramped lecture hall at Northwestern, arguing over which Excel function was superior. He was editing venture capital podcasts in his dorm. I was buried in cash flow projections. Even then, I knew his mind worked 10 steps ahead of anyone else's. When my world unraveled, Emails hacked, Emily threatened Sam, shifted from loyal friend to covert operative. Within hours he tapped his Chicago network, a former Stratton & Co. analyst who owed him a favor, a Tribune investigative reporter hungry for the next big exposé, and a cybersecurity guru from his summer internship at J.P. Morgan. By the next morning, we had 3 sworn affidavits, leaked internal memo stamped with Stratton's letterhead, and a technical report pinpointing the VPN exit node masquerading as London. We worked across time zones, me in New York at dawn, him in Chicago at dusk, threading through metadata, decoding header logs, and tracing every suspicious IP. When Emily's laptop resurfaced at a police evidence locker in Evanston, Sam cut through bureaucratic red tape personally, ensuring the device was secured and its contents authenticated. He even negotiated pro bono representation with a former SEC attorney turned advisor, and lined up a spot for me as a keynote speaker at the Tech Women Summit in Mountain View. Fast forward 6 months. I'm no longer in my corner office overlooking the Hudson. Instead, I'm in a bright Palo Alto conference room, where Johnson & Brooks Advisory just celebrated its first major milestone, $2,300,000, 0 cents in Q1 revenue, beating our projections by 30%. We've closed 5 multi-million-dollar engagements, 2 seed-stage tech startups, a mid-market retailer, and a nonprofit focused on financial literacy. Our lean team of 8 feels more like family. Emily running client relations with her trademark blend of empathy and efficiency, Sam directing forensic investigations, and me steering strategy. That night, we toasted with local Pinot Noir under the glow of the Golden Gate Bridge, mapping our next moves, launching a Seattle office, recruiting a compliance officer, and rolling out a Women in Finance mentorship program by year's end. The scars of betrayal remain, but they've sharpened our resolve and cemented our bond. Without Samuel's ingenuity and unwavering loyalty, from tracing a phantom VPN to negotiating every critical alliance, none of this would exist. He didn't just help me recover. Picture this. A charity gala at a Park Avenue penthouse, crystal chandeliers, string quartets, and New York's wealthiest in black tie gowns and tailored tuxes. I slipped in just before the main speech, my heart pounding, determination wrapped around me like my evening shawl. Samuel and I had coordinated with a veteran reporter at the Financial Beacon, and our plan was simple. Expose Michael and Laura's corruption in front of the very crowd they'd courted for donations. My mother Laura was perched on a stool behind the charity's fundraising podium, beaming as she prepared to announce the night's total. The digital counter behind her flickered. $1,800,000, 0 cents raised so far. Figure polished by their secret siphoning, of course. Dad, in his crisp midnight glue tux, was mixing a glass of champagne, nodding at guests and whispering about matching gifts. The irony made my stomach twist. Samuel tapped my arm. "Cue the video," he whispered. I pulled out my phone, hit play, and projected the footage onto the screen behind the podium. It started with the same hidden camera clip of Dad meeting Victor Hargrove under that flickering street lamp. But then it cut to new evidence, Excel spreadsheets Laura had emailed to herself, detailing every illicit transmit, names, dates, and amounts, overlaid with her own handwritten notes. The room went deathly silent. Wine glasses paused mid-air. The string quartet stopped mid-note, and for a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the reporter from Financial Beacon strode forward, mic in hand. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, voice steady, "what you're about to see will change how you view tonight's generosity." A hush descended as he narrated the ledger. $5,200,000, 0 cents redirected from the nonprofit's endowment into shell accounts controlled by the Johnsons. He played audio clips of Laura rationalizing the scheme. "It's just a bridge loan, dear. We'll pay it back." And of Michael insisting, "No one will notice a few million among billions." I watched my parents on the podium. First, Laura's face lost color, her smile slipping. She clutched the mic so tight her knuckles went white. Michael's glass shattered against the floor as he set it down, champagne splashing over the marble. Their rehearsed composure cracked like glass. Then came the best part. Emily, standing at the back with her phone. She tapped live. Suddenly everyone's phones buzzed with a push notification, a link to the full exposé, complete with documentation, audio and video. Guests fanned out, their screens lighting up like fireflies. The room transformed into a hive of murmurs, flashing screens, and stunned expressions. Paparazzi had been tipped off to gather outside the building. At that moment, dozens of cameras clicked through the windows, flashes like tiny thunderbolts. I swear I could feel the vibrations against the crystal walls. Luxury dresses and sequined gowns blurred in the glare of multiple lens flare. My parents were now the headline act. Laura dropped the mic. It clanged on the hardwood. "Please," she whispered, voice cracking. "This isn't what it looks like." But it was exactly what it looked like. The ledger, the timestamps, the forged signatures, all laid bare in front of New York's elite. Michael tried to stand tall. He took a hesitant step forward, opening his mouth to speak, but the cacophony of camera shutters cut him off. The Financial Beacon reporter raised a hand. "No more statements tonight," he said. "We have enough." In the chaos, Samuel guided me off the podium. We slipped through a side door where my press contacts had set up laptops, live headlines scrolling as we spoke into separate cameras, delivering our side of the story. How we uncovered the scheme, why we chose this moment, and what's next for the nonprofit, safe now that its true stewards would be appointed by an independent board. Outside, the paparazzi swarmed my parents as they walked in single file down the marble staircase. Flash, 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 my mother's teardrops glimmered on her cheeks. My father's face was ashen. I overheard a photographer ask, "Isn't that Claire Johnson's daughter?" My heart clenched. Yes, their daughter. But I no longer shared their guilt. By the time we reached the curb, their black glass limo door shut in their faces, and the driver peeled away. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The empire they'd built on lies had crumbled mid-speech. The power dynamic had shifted irrevocably. Back in my apartment later that night, I watched televised clips of the downfall news anchors, replaying the ledger, pundits debating the legal fallout. I poured myself a glass of water and toasted to Emily's courage, Samuel's loyalty, and my own conviction to stand up for what's right, even when it's your own family. It was a brutal reckoning, but necessary. They say blood is thicker than water, but tonight justice proved thicker than both. Next, I'll share how I transformed this crisis into a catalyst for change, embracing new values, forging fresh traditions, and discovering that true legacy is built on integrity, not inheritance. I'll never forget the morning after the gala. I woke up to the hum of my Soho air conditioner and sunlight slanting across my hardwood floors. The headlines were everywhere. Johnson scandal rocked Park Avenue gala. F's daughter topples family fortune, $5,200,000. 0 cents. Embezzlement exposed. I felt like I was watching someone else's story, until I rolled over, saw my phone buzzing, and remembered I was the one who made it all happen. I sat on the edge of my bed, pulled on my favorite workout leggings and laced up my sneakers. Yoga pants and a t-shirt felt right. I didn't need a power suit today. The city outside was waking up. Yellow cabs weaving down Lafayette, coffee carts wheezing steam onto the sidewalks, early joggers weaving around parked cars. I grabbed my reusable water bottle and headed down the stairs to my apartment building's gym. As I stretched into a half-sun salutations, I thought about the roller coaster of the last few weeks. Betrayal, breakdown, recovery, retribution. Now what comes next? I'd exposed my parents, rebuilt trust with investors, and helped restaff the charity board. But those were external fixes. The real work was internal, redefining what family and success meant, and carving out a legacy I could stand behind. By mid-morning, I'd poured a strong black coffee in my kitchen and settled at my laptop. I drafted a memo to my small team at Johnson & Brooks Advisory. Team, today we close the chapter on our first year. We've grown from 2 founders to a family of 10, hitting $2.30 in Q1 revenue. Let's celebrate resilience, transparency, and integrity. At noon, we'll gather on the rooftop for a brief toast. As I hit send, I noticed a text from Emily. "See you at noon. I've got a surprise." My heart gave a little squeeze. I still couldn't believe how brave she'd been. The rooftop was framed by the steel skyline, and when I stepped outside, I found my team waiting. Emily in her favorite chambray shirt, Samuel leaning against the railing, and the rest of our consultants gathered in a loose semicircle. I raised my coffee cup. "To resilience," I began, voice steady but warm, for turning setbacks into springboards. "To transparency, because hiding never fixes anything. And to integrity, our non-negotiable North Star." We clinked mugs, and somewhere a pigeon cooed in solidarity. Then Emily stepped forward with a small wooden box. Inside was a charm bracelet, each charm a tiny symbol, a balance scale for justice, a lighthouse for guidance, a maple leaf for Samantha's Chicago roots, and a pearl for the ocean breeze of Coney Island. She fastened it around my wrist. "So you'll always remember where we've been," she said softly, "and where we're going." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I managed. This means everything." The rest of the afternoon was a blur of briefings, a Zoom with SEC counsel to confirm our disclosures were complete, a call with the nonprofit's new interim director to transfer authority, and a strategy session with marketing on our next thought leadership article, this one about ethical finance and family-run enterprises. Every conversation reminded me of the lesson I'd learned. Numbers are only as good as the trust that backs them. That evening, I sat on my balcony overlooking the city, the same spot where Emily and I practiced her jazz spins all those years ago. I took a deep breath of the desk air and let myself relive that childhood wonder, the first Christmas, the Rockefeller Center tree, the dreams I'd chased. I realized that in pursuing my own success, I'd confused achievement with affirmation. I'd sought my family's approval so fiercely that I hadn't seen the compromises they made, or that I allowed. Tonight, I made a promise. I would chase success differently. I would build traditions grounded in honesty, not in image. I would mentor young women in finance the way Dad had once mentored me, but with an emphasis on ethics over ego. I would coach Emily on her next career move, business school perhaps, and encourage her to carve her own path, free from anyone's expectations, including mine. A notification pinged, an email from the Tech Women's Summit organizers inviting me back as a keynote speaker with a new topic, Beyond Profit, Cultivating Trust in Business. I smiled. It felt right. I could share my story, the falls and rises, in a way that helped others avoid the pitfalls I'd faced. Late that night, I returned to my planner mom's leather-bound gift. I opened to a blank page and wrote at the top, Legacy Goals. Beneath it, I jotted, launch Women in Finance Mentorship Program, publish immunity financial literacy workshops, create emergency fund for employees facing crises. I closed the planner gently. These goals were more than bullet points. They were promises to myself, to my sister, and to every person who trusted me. As I turned off the light, I thought about the journey, from micro-hook shock to warm patch connection, through betrayal, collapse, spark, turnaround, downfall, and now realization. It hadn't been easy, and I knew tougher tests lay ahead, but I'd learned that real leadership isn't about guarding facades. It's about owning mistakes, standing by your values, and guiding others through the dark. In the end, the greatest lesson wasn't about money or power. It was about the simple, profound truth that trust is the truest currency, one you earn by being real, even when the world expects polish. And as I drifted to sleep, I felt ready to wake up tomorrow and keep honoring that lesson. One day, one decision, one honest conversation at a time.